Calhoun Museum.
Okay.
I think she's on the regional history board as well, and she's worked on me some peeks into the past thing. But she's going to come on and talk a little bit about Kingman, so that'll be 2 weeks from tonight.
Cool.
Let's see. Let's make sure the technology is working here. I think it is. Well, we don't have any company yet, Lucy, but let's just start.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. You are watching Stories at Sundown, Willard Library's groundbreaking program featuring conversations from the people who make our community go. And today, one of the people who make our community go is here with us tonight, Lucy Blair. She's the communications manager at Calhoun County, or for Calhoun County government, I should say. She's been here 4 years. 4 years. It's amazing. That went by so fast.
It went by really fast, but also feels long enough. Like it feels like long enough that I'm now, finding my way.
Yeah. So the last couple of years, I think it's like a time warp anyway. So
I know exactly.
3 years
exactly.
ago. Yeah. But anyway, welcome. So glad to have you. It's been fun getting to know you over the past several months, and fun talking to you last week. And I learned so much about you. And I'm always just as fascinated about what brought people here. I mean, people who didn't come, didn't grow up here, didn't have roots here, who kind of come here and they settle in.
Yeah.
So how the heck did you end up in Calhoun County?
Well, and it's funny because when I came here, even for my interview for county government, I had never been to Marshall before. I'd never really been to Calhoun County. I'd been to Battle Creek, but so it was really new for me. But I came for work. I came to interview for the Calhoun County communications manager job because I was really excited about the potential with the role, and interviewed, and I just had a feeling. I love the county building in Marshall. I was working at Herman Miller beforehand in Grand Rapids, and I came to the county building, and it's this beautiful mid-century modern building. It just has a lot of character, and I fell in love with that. I fell in love with the people I met, and I was like, okay, I want this. And so I came here for that. What's interesting is that, and that was really, the first time I'd been to Marshall or anything like that. But what's funny is that my grandma, so my dad's mom, was born in Athens in 1922 and moved from Athens to Battle Creek and lived in Battle Creek for a while before she went to college at Western. So I do have roots here, even though my grandma never really came back. But I appreciate that she does have some Calhoun County. I have a little bit of Calhoun County in me. I always look at like the Athens history photos because my grandma's dad is in like all these old photos from the early 1900s, and it's so interesting. It's like, it's cool to have a little bit of roots, even though I am new because of the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for folks who don't know what a communications manager is, maybe kind of describe that a little bit. I mean, as we talked about, I think that in this age of distrust of, government or institutions in general, politicians, Congress, whatever, I mean, your job, if you really boil it down, is to engender trust. And
Absolutely.
What
I hope so.
the government is doing, right? So talk about what you do.
I mean, just from a surface level, I help all county offices with whatever communication needs they have. And so that can be anything. It can be a lot of press releases. So we have a whole flow of how we send out press releases. But it could be brochures, posters, flyers. I really love the moments where someone will come to me and say, how do we tell the public about this? And then we start thinking through, and I have a flow for how I identify what is it that we're trying to communicate? What's the goal here? What's our audience? How are we going to measure success? Things like that. So ultimately, it's solving communications problems for the county. And there's a lot of different offices. So, you think road department, public health department, sheriff's office, courts, water resources, recycling, it's so many different things. And that's what was really exciting to me about the job, was that it was all over the place. And you could tell, just like and then you think about the amount of potential that there is too, because every single office has plenty of communication needs. And so my job is to just, hopefully leverage, the folks that we have in the county, but ultimately find ways so that we're communicating with the public strongly. The website is something that I'm in charge of. And so we did a website redesign. It went live March 12th, 2020. So right before the pandemic hit. It was my little blessing that it went live. And then I had COVID and all the emergency response for that. But so the website's a big part of it, because we want to make sure that the website is useful for the public and also for staff. So, it's just it can be a million things. And then a lot of it's just management of my time and making sure that we're hitting the most important things and getting information out there, and, definitely doing it in a thoughtful way. And that's where, building trust comes in, because ideally, your government provides the information that you need to, understand whatever it is, depending on the office. And so it's important, and it's important to, keep a level head in terms of, what is it we're trying to do? What are the tools that we have? What's the best way to communicate, that sort of thing?
Yeah. I think that it's true of probably all governments, that it's a mystery to a lot of folks. But I cut my teeth as a reporter covering county government in southern New Jersey, covering the board of freeholders.
Interesting.
And seriously, I mean, I think what county government does is kind of a mystery to folks. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so my boss, Kelly Scott, she's the county administrator, and the way that she describes it, which I think is really apt, is that a lot of times county government is kind of like a gap filler. You have municipal, so city, that is going to have like public works and really direct services that it offers. You have state, that's a little different. Federal, obviously, is very different. County is kind of, especially from a local perspective, it's helping to fill some of these gaps. I think public health department's a good example in terms of, thinking kind of at a county level about public health and offering solutions and things like that. And so, it is really interesting. It's part of what I love about it, is that it's pretty vast. It also has a lot of potential. There's a lot of room to explore new things. I know you through the broadband initiative. And so the broadband's a good example of how county government can try to solve problems. Transit initiatives going on right now as well. That's another example of ways that county government can really try to problem solve based on what's going on. And then it's such a special thing, because you're bringing together these other municipalities, the townships, which in Calhoun we have 19. We're working with all of these people to help solve, really interesting problems.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up broadband task force, because I think that's a really interesting and a good problem to have, because in many ways it bridges all the political and ideological divides of our community. Everybody believes that it's necessary. Of course, where we diverge is how we make it happen, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think we're both like seeing how interesting it is to try to help people think about internet access as like a public need, and thinking about it as infrastructure, while also trying to figure out how to make it happen, how to make something happen. What's the solution here? What could county government do? And so just exploring that is so interesting. And, I really appreciate that experience, because I think what we're trying to do is I don't know how much you want to get into it, but you identified how much the need was. We all saw the need because of COVID.
Yeah.
And now county government is uniquely situated to be able to try to solve it. And I love that. I love that problem solving.
Yeah, and I love having the help, believe me. Here at the library, it's a big part of what we do is help people navigate, because people don't have computers at home. They don't have internet access at home. And yet every government agency, every employer is forcing them to do everything online.
Definitely.
So it's that gap is really widening, and so I feel really fortunate that Kelly, honestly, who immediately said, yes, I'm going to take this to the Board of Commissioners, and yes, I have Lucy Blair.
And honestly, like, it's been a privilege for me to just learn how this sort of thing can even, and we've learned so much about different municipal networks and possibilities. And, I just feel like we're seeing government happen. It started from grassroots effort to solve the digital divide. And now, we're seeing real possible solutions. And, it's hard to say, but there's a lot of potential, and we're really working that. And I'm proud of us. I really think Calhoun is uniquely situated to be able to find solutions for this problem. And that's a cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, it really is. So, I mean, one of the things that really comes through when I talk to you about your job is how much you love it, and how much you love. You describe your job as Parks and Rec on steroids. What did you mean by that?
I think what's so easy to love about Parks and Rec is that, they're such vast personalities, and that's absolutely true with
What's Parks and Rec for the people who've never seen it?
Parks and Rec is, what's her name? The main character, Leslie? Nope. But so it's a local government, Pawnee, Illinois, trying to, do their parks department. Right. And it's the personalities that make up the parks department and make up their local government, and the problems that come up with local government. And that's true for county government. Why I say it's on steroids, perhaps, is because I think that the problems we're trying, maybe the stakes are a little bit higher. We have a parks department, which is amazing. But we also have sheriff and public health and courts and things like that. And there's personalities that make all of those things happen. And I just find the drama of it all very interesting. And not drama in like a bad sense, but more just like the human element that makes this thing go. And I have a unique seat in that show.
So I want to get into some of that human element, because you've done some writing, and I asked you for some links and you sent them to me. So I decided, without even consulting you, that I consulted you right before this program started, but we're going to put up some of them, because I think the stories were really charming, actually. And really brought some personalities out that to a lot of people are invisible. I mean, you don't know these folks. So we're going to go ahead and add this PowerPoint to the stream.
Great.
So go ahead and tell us about this.
So this is Sarah Kelly. Sarah Kelly is the recycling coordinator for Calhoun County. It's really shocking how it's not shocking that she's so knowledgeable. It's shocking to me how complicated it is, and she understands the nuances of it. And so I've learned a lot from Sarah about the kind of how tricky the recycling industry is. She's taught me a lot, and she does it in service of county recycling and wanting to provide options. And so, our county recycling, they have the recycling center that's based in Marshall, and then she does a lot of collections throughout the county. She's also always like thinking up other ways too. She's just seeing some of the problems that folks have. Like, one of the things she brought to me recently was that, sometimes when people are cleaning out the homes of their loved ones, they come across all these different materials they don't know what to do with. And so how can we help educate people about what to do if you're in that situation? So Sarah is really, she's super knowledgeable about the topic, and she just really, she's also very good at describing it, and very articulate on, how does recycling work and what sort of solutions might be good for Calhoun. So
and I've been to events there where she's working, and she is incredibly helpful and enthusiastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like she's so passionate about it too. And she'll like her stories about, some of the things that have been delivered or, situations she kind of had to solve. People get really worked up about recycling. And so having to manage personalities and things like that. And that was why she was an easy person I wanted to write about, was because, just the sorts of dramas she would even tell you this. I mean, the sorts of dramas that she has to deal with recycling are unexpected, but I mean, kind of bigger picture, that's why I find all this really interesting, because the problems that we're helping to solve are very personal for people, and they're very real. And, she's definitely one of those folks and she literally jumps right in to, clean up and all kinds of things.
Recycling is hard. It's complicated.
Yeah.
It's actually hard for us living in townships because you got to get to the landfill, or you got to, limited hours.
Yep, definitely. And yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, you're photographers. You take these with your cell phone, or?
Yeah, I have a camera sometimes. I have a little, it's basically a point and shoot that I use sometimes for nicer photos, but sometimes, just my phone.
Yeah. And so this one was when you were out on the road, and everybody does know, by the way, that the county is responsible for roads.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
That is no mystery.
Yeah.
But you were on the road with Corey. What's his last name?
Albrecht. Yep.
Oh, that's right.
And he's the operations director for the road department. And Corey took me out one day for a ride along, and we encountered all kinds of things. This is boom mowing that was taking place on a county road.
Yeah.
And I love, so writing is kind of my favorite. That's what I want to do. That's kind of the direction I'm always thinking.
Yeah.
And I love describing county road treatments. and how it's so interesting. It's so interesting, the different things and how it all works. I mean, even local road funding is really interesting. And, just all the different maintenance things that they do. Boom mowing is one of them. But yeah, so driving around with Corey, I wrote about that. That's the article that you read. That one was in the Advisor as well. And, just being able to see what that's like for him, how he problem solves as he goes, and just the different types of things. And then he was describing to me all the different treatments and stuff like that. So,
well, I mean, and that's what I loved about reading this. And by the way, folks, you can read these articles on lucyblair.com.
Yeah, especially lucyblair.com/CCHT for Calhoun County History Tour. That'll take you right to these. But, this is kind of fun because I really love hearing what Corey's favorite roads were. I have this dream of doing a project where we ask the road workers what their favorite parts of the county are, because we're a massive county. And so, to talk about all the different areas that make Calhoun special, that's something that's really special to me. And being able to ask Corey that question is nice. And it's funny because you can even tell in this, he's all over the place in terms of his favorite parts of the county. He just, it's
couldn't choose, really.
Exactly. And I get it. I really get it. I think that the work that we do, it's, you think about the road department specifically, they're genuinely caring about improving the roads, every part of the county, with the odds are kind of stacked against them, whether it's just the weather. I mean, just the weather alone is, the odds are stacked against you. But I just really appreciate, and again, it goes back to the folks who do it, and hearing from them. I think hearing from the folks who make this work happen is the most interesting thing.
Yeah. And well, actually, you mentioned in that article, I mean, the weather changed their plans for that day. They had to switch to patching. I forget what they were going to be doing, surfacing or something like that.
Yeah.
Really proud of their work on county bridges. Yeah, and what comes across in all of these, and Tom did ask the question, which I think we answered, lucyblair.com, pretty easy to remember. But this sense of place, this love of place, which
Mhm.
really came through when we actually sat down and talked about this interview. But I mean, he clearly loves it here,
Yeah.
and I think that's pretty. And at least the way you portrayed him, and I don't know Corey Arbach, but the way you portrayed him, he loves his job.
Yeah. And it's a hard job. And so to love it still and do good, show up every day with these teams of people who are going to go out and like spread out and try to, solve problems in all the different types of ways. It's just so interesting. I could go back all the time to how interesting it is, I think
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So this one was a fun story. You were out with Jen Bomba, who is
Yeah.
county planning supervisor. Is that the title?
Community development director, but planning and zoning is a big part of it. She also has all the community development offices in her. But one of the things about Jen Bamba is that she grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
So for her, she loves farms. She loves pig farms specifically. And so we went to, this is the Blight farm that's in Albion. It's kind of like at the Albion Marshall line. And man, this was such a cool experience for me because I learned so much about farming in general. Afton is the name of the woman who took us around, Afton Blight, and like she just is so knowledgeable and really loves what she does, and so took us around. Yeah, that's her. Yeah, and I just loved that experience. Like that's and that experience is kind of indicative of kind of my favorite part of my job, which is just like. And granted, this was kind of separate. This was just a farm tour I wanted to take. But I love the experiences where I get to just do something completely separate and learn something completely new. And this was one of those experiences, just going out and learning about what it was like to be a farm. And in this case, Jen knew them. I forget how, but knew that they also are really like working hard at like, I'm gonna get the word wrong, but just like smart farming practices.
Right.
And
They use no-till farming. They plant cover crops,
yeah,
and actually, the list of crops that you put in your article are not crops identified with cover crops.
right, exactly. Wasn't that interesting? Like odd choices, but makes sense.
Yeah,
But cover it helps with like the restoration of the farms and things like that. That whole experience was so interesting.
yeah. I'm gonna go to full screen. I have this tiny little monitor that I'm monitoring all this stuff, but I want to go to full screen so I can read this out loud. But this is you. I mean, your stories are often written in the first person, and drive around Calhoun County. That's what I love about my job. Standing in the field is dreamy, and I'm often in the clouds. But understanding how farms operate makes them real. When poetry is put into context of actual labor and the economics of our county, it's valuable in a new way. Poetry becomes something more, something realer. I love it when people make up words like realer. No, but that's really nice. And we talked about this last week about navigating a job where you really work for a whole range of people with a whole range of ideologies, whether
Absolutely.
that's religious, whether that's political, whether that's cultural. And we live in a really diverse community where we go from urban to suburban to rural very, very quickly. And I've always noticed that here, that there can be some baked in distrust or guardedness about the others. And what you reveal, what your writing reveals, I think, is that these are just people working for the government, and they're just like everybody else, and they love their home, and they want to do good.
I love to hear you say that because I think, that really is my intent because, you know, that's one thing that feels so rich about my job is that each of these people are individual people who are genuinely trying to do good work every day. And it's every single person has their own story, and like they're our neighbors. I mean, that's the other thing. Like when it's local government, these are our neighbors who are helping to make county government happen. And I just feel it truly, truly feels like a privilege to be able to tell their stories, in whatever capacity, even if it's just a brochure about, recruitment for corrections. When I do those things, I'm often thinking of the folks who make it happen and the folks that show up every day to do these different jobs that, county government just operates because of them, and so and ultimately, like, some of the politics or the ideologies, you know and that's something that I always found really interesting about county government, is that, like, to some degree, not completely, but to some degree, like, that stuff doesn't even come to play a ton.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, getting things done, when we all show up at the table, that sort of stuff, like, the ideologies don't really matter, because, like, we're just trying to problem solve to get X, Y, or Z accomplished. And we want to have the experts there, and we want to lean on, knowledge bases that Calhoun does have. And so, yeah, I really love, the writing for me is just a real, and that's, to me, my favorite way of, like, kind of translating what I'm experiencing with my job, which is telling the stories that I experience.
Yeah. I think that was the last. Oh, no, we did have one more.
This is Cindy Rude. I love Cindy Rude. Cindy Rude is the probate court administrator, and she's been with Calhoun County for a while, and she's just such a bright light. Like, she's just such a nice person. She does really good work up there in probate court. And I actually have worked with Cindy kind of further, because she also does this really interesting program with the state where she trains, like, kind of frontline court workers for any courts in Michigan. And she trains them on, like, to some degree, it's like the basics of, what that job might be. But you end up, like, having conversations about, one thing that always struck me about that training, because then, of course, I went and did the training because I can't help myself. And one of the things that I learned was that, like, they're having conversations with the folks who are working the front desk at the courts about, like, the people who are coming to you and you're working with are literally having the worst day of their life. Like, they are not in the courthouse, for typically something very joyous, typically. And so, just, like, thinking about that, and from a court worker's perspective, which, also takes into account the work that goes into that and the heart that you have to give in order to do, just a really, really compassionate, like, approach. And she's so passionate about it. She does it all over the state. She helps with developing that programming. And then just in general with probate court, she's just super, super knowledgeable. I've learned all kinds of things about probate court I never would have known before.
Yeah. I love this quote. I'm going to blow it up again because, again, you already alluded to it. Always wanted to be a teacher, but her parents didn't prioritize education. Courts clerk instead, which she told me she's happy with. But I'm grateful to listen. That gave me chills. It just gave me chills again.
It's so true, though. I really appreciate, and that's why I love writing about it, is I love being able to be present for these stories. These people are special. And that's the truth anywhere you go. But you don't often get to see county government employees in this light, and see, like, the heart that they give to probate court every single day. And I'm uniquely situated to be able to tell those stories.
Yeah. So, question for you. We talked about this era that we're in, where everything, teachers, school administrators, police chiefs, police officers, journalists, on and on. There is just a narrative out there that encourages, I think, people, and maybe experiences too. I don't want to discount everybody's experience, but it does seem that trust is hard to come by. Do you find it difficult to be yourself and do your job?
I think I could. I think that I'm very conscious that I would like to be myself in order to do this job. That was a big reason. That was kind of like literally was on my mind as I was interviewing for this job, was that I was looking for something where I could be myself, because I'm a little odd. And I think I'm very much myself. And, I just wanted a job where I could be myself, and I could also be myself in a position of strength, which,
Sure.
I'm not going to lie, was a big part of it too, to be able to help make decisions and lead, now leading a department and making decisions about how county government does communications. That revs me up. I mean, that makes me so excited to be able to think strategically and then to be able to do it as myself. A lot of people don't get that privilege, and I am in a situation where I've expressed this to you, that my boss, Kelly, really appreciates who I am, and she shows me that. And so it gives me room to be myself. And I think that by being myself, I'm able to do my job better. I really when I walk into meetings that I'm managing, when I walk into communications problem solving, I want to do it from a compassionate place. I want to do it from a place of prioritizing access and transparency, because those things are important to me. Even something like giving, like, for instance, let's say it's recycling, and a good example would be, we're creating content for the recycling Facebook page. If I can help bring Sarah's personality through that, I think the content's that much more compelling. And, I think that's also another way that I bring kind of my perspective to the job that allows me to do it better, because I'm really excited about what the people who make this work happen. I also would argue, and this is just my perspective, but I would argue that it also creates that much more trust, like you were talking about, with the public, when they can see humans doing this work. That's a big one for the road department.
Yeah.
We're careful that we don't, necessarily like say, even like, here's where the road workers are, because we're conscious of safety and things like that. But, I think when we're able to show that there's a person responding to people, sometimes with really intense comments, if we're able to just like, we hear you, even that, just saying that we hear you, thanks for your comment, here's the answer, it calms people down immediately, when you're able to show that there's a person. And so I think that that's a big reason why I bring who I am to my job, and why I consciously try to be present, because be present in myself is because I do think it makes me better at my job. And I also think it makes the outputs better.
You're a trained journalist. You went to journalism school. You worked for your student newspaper.
Yeah.
What does objectivity mean to you?
Ooh, I like this question. Because, and I think it was you who had a great thought about journalists in terms of how, that no person gets rid of their bias, right? Like, you can't just like say like, oh no, this was the most, objective piece ever written, I mean, you could, but I think inevitably people bring their bias. Because I'm trained in journalism, I do understand how to write without editorializing. And so that to me is a big thing. And especially because I'm writing for the county on a regular basis, that is definitely like kind of day to day writing. And I'm writing from a objective perspective, in the sense that I just want to give you the facts. I'm just trying to deliver these facts so that you can get the information that you need about your county government. This is not a time for Lucy's, like, I'm glowing because Cindy Rude teared up, like that's not the time for that. But, so that's part of it. Whether or not I see the effects of whether or not I can actually be objective every day, in terms of maybe making different choices about how we word things, maybe making different choices about whether or not to include things. I mean, it just is a nuance thing. And I think that I hope, and here I am saying it, like, my job is to do that in a professional and especially in a way that the public deserves. That's my job. My job is to be like objective. I don't know if we ever can be completely objective, but to write in a way that prioritizes transparency and the information that the public deserves. And that means removing, whatever it is that I might comment in my own personal writing or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. It's nuanced and there's fine lines. I used to say that objectivity isn't a state of being; it's a method. It's how you go about your job. But one of the things, as I was listening to you talk just now, was it's really about curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just wide open curiosity about the people that you're getting to know and the people. I guess use the quote audience. We used to not call them audiences. We used to call them readers. But in any event, curiosity.
Yeah. Well, and that the curiosity is what helps me figure out what to say, because I find the road treatment so interesting. I'm able to then better describe what chip and seal is because people are super worked up about chip and seal, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about why they use chip and seal. Let's talk about, X, Y, or Z. And so, that curiosity is really what gives me kind of like the data, kind of like the facts that then sculpt the communications that I'm doing. Right. And so, that drives me 100% because there's always more to learn. I mean, there's just endless amounts to learn when it comes to county government. And so my curiosity will help me then better communicate for the public, hopefully.
Right. One of the articles in that I read was actually it was something you'd sent back to Northern
to the newspaper, yeah,
where you went to school.
Yeah.
And now I don't know if it was written or it was something you said to me, but I have on this program a lot of times people who have left and come back. I have on this program young people who decided they're put their stake in the ground here. This is home. But a lot of people are antsy to leave their hometown. I certainly was. A lot of young people. Mm-hmm. And you made the comment that, or you wrote the line that one of your resident assistant in your freshman year was from Battle Creek.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah. Get out, and now she's reading your stuff, and it's putting her community in a new light for her.
Yeah.
Does that newness help you think, or is it really just a function of you applying your objective method, so to speak? Or both? It can be both.
I think, especially in the beginning when I first moved here, it was the newness. I just was kind of completely fascinated by everything that I was experiencing. And so for me, I felt like it was a privilege to just write about it then. But I have had a couple people who said that to me now. Kim Langridge, who we both know, who lives in Marshall, says that it's said something about, how reading about Marshall that I write helps her see her town differently. And I think that's what I love about writing in general, is being able to create an environmental landscape that is recognizable, but is hopefully in this perspective that allows people to, because it is really core to who I am, is kind of this ultra, I call it radical empathy, just really believing that we can prioritize compassion to how we function in society. And writing about these environments simply by telling the stories of what happens here, I believe, is a way to do that. And that's intentional for me. That's very much, when I write about an experience or a story or kind of a situation that I've been in, is if I can provide the facts in a way that allows people to kind of sift in that and think about it and work through that, then inevitably something comes from that, I think, and so it's intentional with my writing, like you said, a lot of the stuff on my everything on the website is intentionally in my voice. That's the goal, is to write in my voice full time. That's what I want to do. And that's why, is because I love telling these stories and helping to shape a perspective of things that creates room for people to breathe in. That's special. And that's a gift. That's like, it's a gift to me to be able to do that, to be able to like think about a place in a way that allows and because I think I could stay in Calhoun forever and write about Calhoun forever. I feel that, so I don't think it's entirely a newness thing, although definitely when I started I was like, I got to write about this because I just can't get enough.
Yeah. So when we talked and I listened to you talk, and I at the end of our conversation I said, is it fair to say that you're in love with Calhoun County? And you said, yeah. And so that's what I promoted. Seriously, what is it about this place that you love?
I honestly, I grew up in Metro Detroit in Northville, which is very suburban and upper middle class. I left for college and went to the UP and lived in the UP for 8 years because I couldn't get enough. I got my bachelor's and my master's and stayed because I didn't want to leave. And then I went to Grand Rapids, and that wasn't for me. And so I was looking for something, and I found Calhoun and mostly found the job. But what I found here was like a community that is this certain kind of size where people, we've talked about this already, so I apologize, I'm repeating myself, but like, I just really appreciate the size because I think that we're a size where, I mean, you can really work hard at anything and see an outcome and see change and see progress. We are not too big that can't happen. We're also not too small that like you're going to know every single person, you might. I mean, you've been here for a while.
Meet new people all the time.
Right. And, and I think like that's what's so special about the size of Calhoun from county government perspective. Even the broadband initiative is a perfect example of being able to see change happen. And I don't think that would be the case somewhere else. What I loved about Northern was its size. For a college student who's new to all of that, it was a good size for me to feel really like I could do something significant. Working for the student newspaper was definitely that for me. I could do something, and I could go somewhere, and I could really like be myself really too. I come back to that too, being able to be myself in an environment and be able to make changes myself and to be able to help. I like being helpful. That's kind of just like, I keep going back to just wanting to be helpful. And I can be really helpful in a community this size. That's what I believe. And I see it,
Yeah. Well, we got to go. I could talk to you for another hour.
I appreciate you so much. This was really fun.
It was a lot of fun. Lucy Blair, County Communications Manager. And well, I guess that covers it all, but it doesn't seem to. Got a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next week, I'm taking the night off. Actually, I'm not taking the night off. I'm going to a conference in Detroit or in Michigan. But we'll come back in 2 weeks, and Emily Powell, who works at Kingman Museum, is going to join us, talk a little bit about what's going on there. And those of you who watched Peaks in the Past on this station, so to speak, know that it's just effervescent. And so I'm really excited about that and hope you can join us. And maybe by then we'll have more normal, like 70 degrees, maybe even 80 from time to time. Ooh,
yes, that sounds lovely. I'm ready.
I'm over this cool weather.
Me too. It's enough.
All right. Thanks a lot, Lucy, and good night, everybody.